There have been moments when you stayed silent for a long time. Not because you didn't care, but because there were too many feelings inside that didn't have names yet. With Pisces, the heart always senses things before the mind has a chance to speak. And sometimes, after a conversation ends, after an unexpected distance quietly appears, you suddenly realize that you may have left something very deep in someone else's heart. An apology that was never spoken doesn't disappear. It stays, quietly, like a small wave moving beneath calm water. This video isn't here to decide what was right or wrong. It's simply a story, an invitation to sit with yourself, to listen to your own emotions, and to understand more deeply why Pisces often carries things in the heart that were never put into words. And from that moment of awareness, the real story begins. That moment usually arrives very softly, without warning, not a dramatic peak, just a brief pause after everything has already passed. Pisces finds themselves standing in a familiar space. Everything around them continues as usual. Life moves on. But inside, something begins to stir, slow, deep, like water moving beneath a calm ocean surface. You never meant to hurt anyone. In fact, at that moment, you truly believed you were doing what was necessary. Creating distance to protect yourself, choosing silence to avoid saying something you might regret, or reacting to emotions that rose too quickly to contain. Pisces lives through feeling. You take in the world through intuition more than logic, so your reactions often come from the heart, before the mind has time to put everything into order. The conversation ends. If a message goes unanswered, a look changes, no explanation, no argument, just the sense that something slipped out of rhythm. Time moves forward, space grows. And within that quiet space, Pisces begins to look back. Not right away, but after the emotions settle, after the pull of the initial reaction fades. When the heart becomes steady enough to see more clearly, you remember their voice, the way they pause mid-sentence, the look in their eyes, no longer the same. Tiny details, yet they stay with you. And then a thought appears, gently, without judgment. Just a quiet realization. Maybe I left a mark. Pisces doesn't recognize this in the moment it happens. Because when emotions run high, you only see your side. You feel the exhaustion, the hurt, the need to protect yourself. What belongs to the other person falls outside your view for a while, but when the wave pulls back, the ocean floor is revealed, and with it, a deeper understanding emerges. You begin to place yourself where they stood. If it were you, would you have felt left behind? Did those words touch an old wound you never saw? Did the silence make them believe their feelings didn't matter? Pisces has a powerful ability to sense the pain of others, and because of that, the moment you realize you may have contributed to that pain, your heart grows heavy. No one blames you. No accusations are spoken. But inside, you meet yourself honestly. You no longer see yourself as the victim. You don't label yourself as entirely at fault either, just a human being, learning how their emotions move through the world around them. That moment isn't loud. It's like a small light turning on in a dark room. It doesn't change everything at once, but it shows enough to reveal the shape of the truth. And from that point of awareness, another journey begins. A journey of taking responsibility for your emotions, learning to love with greater awareness, learning to be gentler, not only with others, but with yourself as well. This isn't a story about blame, and it isn't a verdict of right or wrong. It's simply the moment Pisces begins to understand that every emotion carried within has a greater impact than once imagined. And in recognizing that, the heart of Pisces moves into a deeper level of maturity. When you realize that you may have left an unintended mark in someone else's heart, Pisces doesn't rush to offer an apology as a reflex. What holds you back isn't shallow hesitation. It's a very real concern. If the words come out the wrong way, things could become even more complicated. For Pisces, words are more than a tool for communication. They carry emotion. They leave an echo. And you understand deeply that something spoken before it has fully settled can quietly create more distance. Questions begin to surface in your mind. If I speak now, are they ready to hear it? Do they need an apology, or do they need more time for their emotions to find balance again? You turn the questions inward as well. Am I speaking to help them feel understood, or simply to ease the heaviness pressing on my own chest. The line between those two intentions can feel incredibly thin, and Pisces doesn't want to cross it without awareness. That's why you choose silence, not to avoid responsibility, but to avoid turning an apology into something that only serves your own feelings. Pisces understands that everyone receives healing at a different pace. Some people need explanations, some need space, and some need to see change before trusting any words at all. You respect that, even when that respect means sitting with discomfort a little longer. Another reason Pisces hesitates to speak too soon is the fear of letting an apology become a social ritual. You don't want to say, "I'm sorry," just to complete a required step in a relationship. You want those words, when spoken, to carry real understanding of what truly happened. Understanding why you reacted the way you did. Understanding where the other person was affected. Understanding what needs to shift within you. Until those things become clear, the apology can feel unfinished. And you would rather wait than offer words that aren't yet strong enough to support healing. There's also a quieter fear beneath it all. The fear that your sincerity might not be received in the way you hope. Not because the other person is cold, but because everyone speaks a different emotional language. You worry your apology might sound like justification. You worry your attempt to reconnect might feel like pressure. You worry about interrupting someone else's healing process. And so, the apology is held back, not hidden, but protected. Protected from becoming another unnecessary collision. During that time, Pisces doesn't stand still. You observe how you respond in similar situations. You notice where you can do better. You learn to name emotions earlier and more clearly. This silence isn't empty. It's filled with reflection, and with quiet recalibration, with the desire to become a more thoughtful version of yourself. And when the right moment arrives, the apology, if it is spoken, won't be aimed only at the past. It will reflect the person you are becoming. For Pisces, sincerity isn't about speed. It lives in the depth you're willing to enter, so the same wound is never created again. Silence doesn't make the heart feel lighter. It simply creates enough space for the real emotions to rise to the surface. For Pisces, what has happened doesn't end when the story stops being told. It continues to live in the mind, slipping into very private moments when you're alone and no longer need to play the role of being strong for anyone. Life on the outside keeps moving. New days arrive. Other conversations unfold. But somewhere inside, an old image still returns from time to time. Not words, but a look. Their eyes, in the moment they realized what you had just said. A barely noticeable pause. A breath that shifted. Details so small most people would overlook them, but Pisces doesn't. You don't try to remember. The images come to you on their own, late at night, in rare quiet spaces between passing thoughts. Or when a memory unexpectedly brushes against an old feeling, and then awareness slowly takes shape, without accusation, without harsh judgment. Just a very clear feeling. I touch something fragile. Pisces experiences the world through deep empathy. You don't just hear other people's stories. You feel the emotional weight behind what they never say out loud. Because of that, the moment you realize you may have contributed to someone's pain, your heart carries a very specific heaviness. No one speaks in blame. No condemning looks appear. But inside, you place yourself where they stood. If it were you, what would you have needed in that moment? An explanation? A quiet presence? Or simply the feeling of being understood? Those questions don't push you into immediate action. They stay. They fill the inner space. They ask you to face your emotional responsibility. Pisces doesn't turn away from this feeling. You allow yourself to feel it fully. The weight, the regret, the sense that you wish you had been more gentle in that moment. This heaviness doesn't come from seeing yourself as completely wrong. It comes from understanding that every reaction leaves a mark. And once you see that clearly, you can't return to living without awareness. There are moments when Pisces wonders whether it might be kinder to go easier on yourself. But then you realize this feeling isn't here to punish you. It exists to help you live with greater care for the emotions of others. You don't want hurt to become a pattern. You don't want people who enter your world to walk away feeling unseen or unheard, so you let that weight remain, not to pull you down, but to serve as a reminder to pause one beat longer before saying something too sharp, a reminder to listen more closely to what lies beneath another person's words, a reminder that gentleness isn't only about intention, but about how you show up. From the outside, the weight of regret can be mistaken for something negative. But for Pisces, it's the sign of a heart that still knows how to feel, a heart that hasn't lost the ability to reflect inward, a heart still willing to learn from emotional friction. And from that very weight, a new layer of maturity begins to take shape, quietly, steadily, without the need to prove anything to anyone. Pisces doesn't carry regret to stay trapped in the past. You carry it as a living reminder. Every emotion you give has an impact, and once you understand that, your heart begins to learn how to love with deeper awareness and with greater responsibility for what you leave behind. After moving through those heavier emotional layers, Pisces begins to notice something subtle. An apology doesn't exist only in words. There are moments when speaking a sentence isn't enough to reach the deepest part of a wound, and you understand that if words aren't supported by inner change, they pass more quickly than you hope. Pisces learns to see an apology as a journey, not a single moment, not a sentence spoken at the right time, but a series of small choices, repeated day after day, in how you show up for others. Instead of rushing to explain, you choose to listen more, not just to the words, but to the breath, the pauses, the things left unsaid. You notice how people respond when sensitive topics surface. You recognize boundaries that deserve respect. You learn to stop before going too far, even if it's only by a single careless phrase. This change isn't displayed outwardly. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't ask for recognition. It happens in how you choose your words, in how you hold space for another person's emotions, in how you don't repeat the same old point of contact. Pisces understands that, for many people, emotional safety doesn't come from promises, but from the experience of being respected over time. And because of that, you allow your actions to become the apology. You no longer react from old patterns. You adjust the rhythm of communication. You let emotion pass through the filter of understanding before it reaches another person. Along the way, Pisces also learns how to be patient with yourself. Real change doesn't arrive in a single moment of clarity. It forms through the times you notice and choose differently. There are moments when you wonder whether the other person sees this at all, but then you realize that transformation isn't about being witnessed. It's about knowing clearly who you are becoming. For Pisces, the heart is where the deepest truth is kept. And when your heart knows you've learned what needed to be learned, a gentle sense of steadiness begins to settle in. Not because everything is fully resolved, but because you're no longer avoiding your emotional responsibility. An apology, in this form, doesn't demand a response. It doesn't wait for acceptance. It exists as a quiet commitment to how you will love from this point forward. Pisces doesn't deny the value of words. You simply understand that some relationships are healed through consistent presence, more than through a sentence spoken at the perfect time. And even if the other person never knows where that change began, your heart recognizes it. You know you've crossed into a new threshold. You know you're no longer moving without awareness. You know you've carried that lesson into the way you live each day. It's that awareness creates a new inner foundation, steady, grounded, without the need to prove anything. Pisces understands that a beautiful apology doesn't always need to be spoken. It can be fully lived through small actions. Through each moment, you choose gentleness instead of reaction. And from that place, a new chapter begins to take shape, not through promises, but through change that has quietly settled into how you meet the world. In the emotional journey of Pisces, forgiving others often comes naturally. You understand their reasons, you see the context, you sense what lies beneath their actions. But when the attention turns inward, the story changes. Pisces has a way of holding on to moments that have already passed, examining them under a much harsher light. You dissect every detail, every sentence, at every reaction you believe you could have handled better. These thoughts don't appear to move you forward. They circle back again and again, bringing you to the same point, asking the same question. If I had chosen differently, would everything have changed? You place yourself in the role of a strict observer. No small mistake goes unnoticed. No softness is allowed. And right there, Pisces realizes something essential. The compassion you offer so freely to the world has not been offered enough to yourself. Maturity doesn't erase mistakes. It opens the ability to face them without losing your sense of worth. As Pisces begins to understand this, a gentle shift happens inside. You stop seeing yourself as something that needs fixing. You begin to see yourself as a soul that is learning. You look back at past moments through a different lens, not to justify, not to deny responsibility, but to understand where you truly stood at that time. You realize that every reaction came from the level of awareness you had then, and you can't ask an earlier version of yourself to carry the clarity you have now. Self-forgiveness doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from accepting that you did the best you could with what you understood in that moment. Pisces begins to release the need to go back and fix everything. Instead, you carry the lesson forward into the choices you make next. You allow yourself to move on without carrying guilt as your constant companion. You understand that holding on to self-blame doesn't make you kinder. It only leaves you exhausted. Forgiving yourself doesn't make you careless. It allows you to stay soft while still living responsibly. And this Pisces learns to speak to yourself in the same tone you often use with others. A tone of compassion, of acknowledging effort, of recognizing that everyone is walking their own path. When this begins to take place, you are no longer trapped in the past. The memories remain, but they no longer control your present emotions. You move forward more lightly. Not because you forgot, but because you stopped fighting yourself. Pisces comes to understand that love, when it's real, doesn't only move outward, it needs to turn inward as well. You don't need to become perfect. You only need enough awareness to learn from experience without losing gentleness. Self-forgiveness opens a new inner space, a place where you no longer have to prove your worth through self-punishment. You meet the world with a heart that has softened again. Not guarded, not withdrawn, just a Pisces who has come to understand this truth. Real love always begins with how you treat yourself, and from that moment on, the relationships you share with others begin to shift as well. Not because you force it, but because you have become more whole from the inside out. If you're carrying an apology that was never spoken, pause for a moment and listen to yourself. Not to judge, not to force yourself to do anything right away. Just to recognize that your heart has already been honest enough to see what needs to be seen. Pisces often carries many layers of emotion. You don't only feel the present, you also carry the echo of what has already passed. And in those deeper layers, the unspoken apology still exists, like an unfinished sentence waiting for its ending. But that silence doesn't mean you've turned away. It simply shows that you're trying to live with greater awareness of what you give to others. Some apologies need to be spoken out loud, and some apologies can only be expressed fully through the way you live afterward, when you choose to listen more carefully, when you become more attentive to another person's emotions, when you don't repeat the same old reactions. That isn't avoidance. That's growth, happening step by step. Pisces doesn't need to rush to prove anything. You don't need to force yourself toward a specific ending, because every relationship, every story, has its own rhythm. When the right moment arrives, you'll feel it clearly. No pressure, no scripted lines. You'll know what to say and how to say it. And if that moment never comes, the story doesn't lose its meaning. Because the change within you continues to move outward. It shows in how you treat others, in how you hold boundaries, in how you respect another person's feelings without losing yourself. Pisces wasn't born to become perfect. You were born to feel the world deeply, to learn through experience, to understand that real love always comes with responsibility. Responsibility for the emotions of others, and just as importantly, responsibility for your own heart. If there are times when you feel heavy because of things left unresolved, remember this. The fact that you can see it is already a meaningful step forward. Not everyone is aware enough to look back at themselves. Not everyone is sensitive enough to understand the impact of their actions on others. Pisces has that awareness, and that isn't a weakness. It's the foundation of a heart that knows how to love well. As you continue walking forward, carry the lesson, but don't carry self-blame as extra weight. You can choose to live more gently, choose to show up with greater clarity, Choose communication rooted in understanding instead of old reflexes. And each time you do that, a quiet apology has already been sent. No confirmation needed. No audience required. Your heart knows. This journey doesn't end here. It simply closes one chapter to open a new way of living. A way of living that knows when to pause, knows when to listen, knows how to love without causing harm. And if you're listening to the final moments of this story, trust this. You're moving in the right direction, not because you never made mistakes, but because you're willing to live better because of them. As Pisces doesn't need to be perfect. You only need to keep moving forward with a heart that can feel, can learn, and can offer gentleness with deeper awareness each day.